It felt like it was gonna be a drama focusing on real events, real people, real stories, very cinema verite. Not necessarily it was gonna be boring, but it was definitely gonna be more like a thoughtful documentary-like movie, instead of one of those movies that challenge not only your brain, but every single one of your senses.
برسیم به جایی که دیگه کسی به ما نگه چی بپوش چی نپوش چه بکن چه نکن.
No! God, please, no! No!
Welcome back to Torn Apart, and today we're doing finally something that is not MCU related, because I feel like in the last couple of months I've only been talking about that, which is kind of insane. I want to talk about other stuff. I want to talk about real cinema. I want to talk about the Palme d'Or. I think this is the third, maybe fourth video that I've made year after year talking about the Palme d'Or. I love the Cannes Film Festival. I think it's one of my favorite festivals probably ever, and it has mostly to do with the fact that there are a lot of my favorite films which end up being showcased at the Palme d'Or Festival. A lot of Palme d'Or winners end up becoming like some of my favorite films as well. Specifically something like Titan, for example, which for me represents everything that a Palme d'Or winner should be. If you look at the themes, if you look at the way that the film is shot, if you look at the performances, it's basically like a perfect film. That is what film festivals should aspire to be at the end of the day. Showcasing incredible films, almost perfect films, films that are definitely gonna be divisive because we all are confronted with different versions of the truth, different interpretations of certain films, and we all come from different backgrounds, because it's one of those festivals that is very, very international, especially if you compare it to other like American or Canadian like film festivals. This one, the Golden Lion in Italy and the La Berlinale in Germany, are some of the most interesting film festivals in the entire world, in my opinion. Mostly because they've existed for a really long time, so they have a history to abide to, and also because they can take risks. Every single year, everyone is looking at those film festivals, and a lot of people are actually paying attention. This is not just a money business, this is an art business. This is choosing films that are gonna be remembered in 10, 20, maybe even 50 years. This has nothing to do with like the Golden Globes or even the Academy Awards. This is not like a popularity contest. This is about choosing films that are literally pieces of art that anyone should be able to appreciate. But when I say that, I mostly mean appreciate in a way that intellectually stimulates you, that like challenges the way that you think about the world, the way that you think about a certain topic. But I had to give you all of this context because this year's winner, it was just an accident, which is an Iranian film directed by Jafar Panahi, and it's one of those films that, for me anyways, it definitely does not look like any kind of other Palme d'Or festival like winner, but at the same time it embodies everything that the festival actually stands for. Before I try to deconstruct this and figure out whether it actually was worth the price, it's worth your time, or whether actually the film is any good, I think we need to go into my own feelings of it. Let's start by a simple interpretation and go deeper and deeper into what this film actually means for the world and even the filmmaking industry. First of all, I need to tell you that I went in with like zero expectations. I didn't Google the synopsis, I didn't even look at the trailer. All I knew is that the new Palme d'Or winner was coming out and I was gonna see it at the cinema because that's what I always do. And for me, it was just an accident, was just too simple, too easy, but not when it came to its subject matter. I'm talking mostly of the way that it was filmed. I'm talking mostly of how it doesn't really have a lot of interesting locations going on. And I'm also talking about the movie's structure. For me, it actually felt like watching a play. There are a lot of moments where you have main characters just almost looking at the the camera and just giving us a monologue, like explaining what the stakes are, explaining what his backstory is, and no one is actually stopping him, interrupting him. It doesn't really feel very genuine in the way that the dialogues are written, and it's a bit weird also because I actually found out that there are a lot of non-professional actors that were hired in this film, and actually this film was made with an entire kind of like guerrilla filmmaking process, which is kind of fascinating. I found out all of that, of course, after I watched the film, so let's stick with my own reading of it. From my experience, it really felt like we were going in circles. We're talking about all of these big themes. We're talking about what is the notion of truth, how can we really know whether someone is actually guilty or not. This movie is basically about a couple of Iranian protest survivors who were captured slash kidnapped in the old regime, and they were basically tortured for information on their friends because they participated on strikes, or sometimes just because they were associated with other people who were participating with these protests slash strikes, and it was kind of brutal. And all of these torturers basically were not brought to justice, and the main topic of this movie is who is actually responsible for enacting the justice that you want as like a democracy, as a people, when you have a government where is actually acting against you, against everything that you actually believe in, even against religion at the end of the day, if you want to talk about those kind of ideologies as well, kind of like corrupting and manipulating the religious texts so that they can spin them around and turn them in their favor. And it's an interesting topic. Like, you're sitting there being like, this reminds me of other like Japanese films, for example, like Rashomon as well, where there are a lot of different characters with their own versions of what happened to them, and they're trying to find the similarities in their stories so they can actually grasp at some kind of version of the truth. There are certain movies which are interesting to talk about more than to actually watch, and I feel like this is definitely one of those films. But I was heading out of the cinema, I was sitting there being like, this almost felt like it was pandering to me. This felt like a film that lacked a lot of nuance. This felt like a film that was almost too direct at times, and this is why I'm talking about the style being almost theatrical, because when it comes to theater and contemporary plays as well, there is a lot of engagement with the audience, fourth wall breaking as well, and this idea of like repeating over and over what the message is, making sure that basically everyone hears it. It's about like confronting you with the truth so that you cannot escape it, so that you cannot interpret it in a different way, especially because we're literally siding with these characters. We're definitely not siding with the government. We do not have their like version of the truth. At the same time, what do you want more? As in, would you prefer if this movie was built like a classic Hollywood like biopic where you get all the dates, you get all the Wikipedia like chapters of what happened in Iran politically, religiously, and how everything changed for women, for example, as well? Or would you actually like something like this, which is a in medias res kind of movie where you go straight into the consequences of the people who are living today in Iran? And what I actually found out is that most of the things that are being told in this movie are things that the director has experienced himself, or stories that he has heard from other people that have actually been tortured basically in real life by the Iranian regime. As I was saying before, this is cinema verite. This is the kind of like classic thing that festivals like quite a lot, and specifically French festivals like quite a lot, because it brings us back to a history of French New Wave, of course, and those kind of films. Italian cinema as well. If you look at the neorealist cinema, it's the kind of thing where you're trying to grasp at something that is and feels real. But I wanted more. Is it asking for too much? I wanted to be like, I wanted to have more style. Maybe I wanted to have like a better soundtrack. I wanted to feel it way more thanks to the actual like substance of the movie itself. And I feel like if you're not paying attention completely to the text, a lot of people are not really gonna be able to identify with the story, and they're not gonna be able to feel how everyone is feeling as well. And I feel like it's a bit of a problem, because I feel like when it comes to films, one of the greatest strengths is being able, by using the different filmmaking techniques, to make you relate to anyone, even if you've never been in their situation, right? And I feel like this movie almost like too straight to the point to be able to actually be as great as many other Palme d'Or winners that have been like awarded in the last few years. But then I came back home, I started researching this topic as well. I was like, I need more context. Maybe there is a different reason why this movie won the Palme d'Or. And this sent me through a different rabbit hole where I was trying basically to understand what is the purpose of this film award in the first place. What are we awarding here? Are we awarding the best, most entertaining movie? Are we awarding the most important movie? Are we awarding the practice of filmmaking itself? Because I feel like this is what it is. This is why this movie won the Palme d'Or. Not necessarily because it was the perfect film, but because of the story around it, the context around it. If you knew, for example, that the director actually was imprisoned and they actually put like a 20-year ban on him, like preventing him to make movies just because he was going against the Iranian regime. And this happened like almost 15 years ago, by the way, I think around 2010. And he went to prison for a couple of months and certain things happened to him as well. And then he went to prison again like a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And then he started working on this film here. And he basically kept making films. He kept making films talking about what was happening in Iran. And maybe this is why. I was sitting there being like, what are we doing here at the end of the day? Why am I here talking to you like on my YouTube channel, talking at this camera, talking at like this virtual like public that I will never maybe reach? And it's because we have the freedom to do so. We have the free time, of course, but we also have the freedom that our government is not going to censor us, that we can do this, we can say whatever we want, almost depending on which country we live in, and have no repercussion. And here we have a guy who's been making films for almost like 30 years now, who despite being like threatened, being like maybe tortured as well, because we don't know exactly what happened to him in prison, still going. Like they literally put a ban on him so that he wouldn't be able to attend like film festivals or even travel abroad. So this movie was actually made like through different guerrilla filmmaking techniques. The fact that they chose a van, for example, is mostly because they could hide equipment in it as well. And they shot this with like a couple of cars, and they shot it without any permits, because this was one of the accusations actually that the regime made against him, that he was shooting without permits. But they would never allow him to shoot the film at the end of the day if he actually asked for permission, right? And this is also why a lot of the actors are non-professionals, because he was trying to make it like underground style, which is admirable. It's incredible. Like when you think about it, if the subject matter is important, if the way that the movie is made actually like enriches the experience of seeing the film as well, if it's well performed, if it's well filmed as well, because of the limitations, I think it's actually incredibly well filmed, because it really doesn't look like a found footage film when you think about it. Like before I told you like the behind the scenes of how this movie was made, did you actually notice that it looked different from any other like foreign film that you've seen in the past few years? Because if I didn't notice, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people didn't notice the style as well. And then I figured it out. I was like, this is why we need to do this. This is the entire point. Like it doesn't matter whether I personally think that other films deserved the Palme d'Or better. I don't think it's true, because this is a movie and this is a filmmaker's career that deserves to be recognized by someone. And these film festivals act also as the link in between general audiences and like art house people, the industry, Hollywood, it doesn't really matter, you know what I mean, right? So more people will know about what is happening in Iran, maybe people that even really care that much at the end of the day. And this is also why I wanted to make this video. I wanted to give you the context, and I wanted to show you how I basically changed my mind. Even though it was not a perfect film, even though it was a film that actually I wouldn't rewatch, or maybe even I wouldn't recommend it to most people, because as I said before, it belongs to the category of films that are more interesting to talk about, as we're doing right now, than to actually experience yourself. It's an important film, and I'm glad that it got the recognition it did, and this is what it is all about at the end of the day. The love of filmmaking, and how it is not just like a nepo baby kind of thing that you're doing because it's easy to do. You do it because it's your only way of telling and conveying the message that you're trying to spread basically around you. And maybe it's the only way that you have also to like psychologically like endure certain things that you're living through in your own country. And I feel like it's a very important thing. I feel like it's it's very deep, and a lot of people will be able to identify with that. An interesting thing we could talk about also is the movie's ending, because it left me a little bit puzzled until I started reading it a little bit more into the details. So basically, spoiler alert for the film, they kidnapped this guy, and at the end of the day, they're not 100% sure that he was actually the one that tortured them. And this is also why it is a struggle for them to make a choice whether they should take his life or not. They end up getting a confession from him, and they seem to actually get something out of him, some kind of like little like glimpse of humanity hidden under all of that manipulations that probably the government has submitted him to be able to do the atrocities that he's committed throughout his life. And they actually let him live. They don't kill him, they don't bury him alive like they wanted to do in the first place, but they access something human about him, and I feel like that's enough for them. They wanted to see basically if he was just the monster that they remembered and that haunted their heads basically and their dreams, or if it was just a human that was so incredibly misled, like basically you could argue like the Nazis were back then during World War II. And you have this character who is basically like getting ready to move out and moving into a new place. He's walking away from the camera. We can see the back of his head, and then you hear this like clanging metallic sound, and we know what that means. That is supposed to be the leg prosthesis of the guy who they actually kidnapped, the torturer. So we hear him coming towards the main guy and leaving slightly after. And I was there being like, I took it literally, as in I took it literally when this guy basically actually ended up finding them, and even though he could have punished them, he decided to basically like not do it, but let them know that he's found them very fast, very easily, and it's gonna haunt them forever. It's never gonna go away. And this is just because basically they were afraid of committing the impossible, so killing him as well and using violence like they did. And then I looked at the different readings of this ending, because there is another interpretation of it which is kind of like the political one, being that the sound doesn't represent the literal person coming back to haunt him, but the power of the Iranian regime always lingering and invading your personal spaces. It doesn't really matter whether they actually got their revenge, they got their confession, because at the end of the day, it's not going to change the system, right? And the other one could be psychological as well. The idea that even though maybe they got some kind of closure from that confession and that whole ordeal, connecting with other survivors and people who have been tortured and imprisoned unjustly as well, even though they did all of that, there is still some kind of psychological like problem with them. They will always remember the pain that they endured, and it will live with them and through them for the rest of their lives. These are the three different readings you could have of this ending, and I was sitting there and being like, that's actually pretty cool. Just the idea that you have an ending that is that ambiguous, that has so many different readings, automatically makes it like cool. Even though subjectively speaking, I didn't really like this idea, mostly because I describe myself as someone on the left side of politics, and this idea of we cannot be as violent as them, it's something that benefits them. It's something that benefits the system. It's something that sometimes actually will make sure that nothing ever changes. If you take just France, for example, La prise de la Bastille happened, the revolution happened, and because of that, there was a change. But it was a violent revolution. So sometimes for change to actually happen, violence needs to happen. So I was sitting there being like, this is the kind of like leftist movie that I don't necessarily agree with. And maybe that's why I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have, because I was sitting there being like, this sends the wrong message. This sends the message that out of fear, we will never be able to enact a change. That maybe if we're strong and resilient enough, and if we go through all the torture, all the pain that the system, the government, or whoever is in power puts on our shoulders, then things will change like magically. But it's not true. That's not what happened. Like, just because you manage to endure, just because you survive, it does not mean that other people will survive as well. It does not mean that the government will actually think, oh look, all of these people are surviving through our torture and killings. Maybe it means that we need to stop. They will never think like that. Like, never. Actually, they will think, look, what we did to them was not that bad. He's walking over there, he's leading like a normal life. No, like your own existence and your own survival will actually represent the opposite of what you think. So no, I do not agree with what the main characters were trying to convey within this film. I don't necessarily think that you should always get your revenge against the people who hurt you. I don't think that necessarily what I mean. I think that the discussion around justice is definitely important, but I do not agree with the final message of this movie being that the good response to this type and amount of like violence and systemic oppression is to basically do nothing. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the plot summary of this film, nothing happened to him. Like his wife is safe at the hospital, he has a new child, his daughter is safe as well, he hasn't lost any of his power or money. Maybe he's been humiliated a little bit, but at the end of the day, does that change anything with the system itself? No, it doesn't. And maybe you could also argue that this is not what the movie's goal is, that he wanted to achieve something completely different, but me personally speaking, it's not something I can 100% like be behind, because I think that there is a place for revolutionary action that is going to create more peace than just sticking up and doing nothing. That's what I think anyways. And I don't want to go deeper and deeper into politics because this is not the main point of my channel just in general. And also because what does it actually mean to be on the left depending on which country you live in? You know what I mean? Like we can have interesting discussions in the comments if you want about this and how you felt with the movie and maybe how you would have acted. Give me actually some different conclusions for this film that you would have enjoyed. It would be an interesting thing to find out. Is there another way that they could have gotten justice in your opinion? A better, maybe less emotional, less revenge-like, or maybe full-on revenge? Let me know what you thought down in the comments. But I'm glad that I made this video. I'm glad that I'm here talking to you about this film because it's important to do so. And I'm glad that this Iranian filmmaker actually got awarded with this incredible prize. I feel like this is a type of film that is definitely going to change my perspective on style over substance and style over substance over context. As in, there are so many different puzzle pieces that make a film, and which ones are the most important ones always depend on what the context is. And this time around, the context was way too powerful and it enriched the experience of the movie itself. But that's what I thought anyways. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you again, I think maybe next week or in 2 weeks. I don't really know because I have a lot of ideas for different videos that I want to make, and it could be next week, it could be in 2 weeks, it doesn't really matter. Just wait and you'll see something quite cool coming out on this channel. As usual, here at the bottom I'm gonna be putting maybe the links to all the other Cannes Film Festival movies that I've reviewed, so you can check them out as well and you can get even more context on what I think about the festival. Having said that, don't forget to smash that like button. Every single time that you do that, you give support to filmmakers around the world whose devotion to filmmaking is honestly impressive.
Can I count on you?
I love it, I love it, I love it. There are no other words that I can use to express how I feel about like making this video and talking to you about this topic, because it's really, 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 really cool. I'm Patrick, and this is Torn Apart.
Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show.